Welcome to Object of the Game. I'm Maureen Kyle here with Coach Chuck Kyle of St. Ignatius High School fame. You probably know his years of success, and the concept that he always drilled into his athletes was the field is a classroom. So on this show, we talk about the life lessons that you learn in sports, your kids are learning in sports, and how that relates to your life as an executive, as an employee, as a parent. What are we teaching our kids as we let them step out onto the field or whatever sport they're playing? So today we're going to have a very important topic. And Dad, you said, what's the quote about agony of defeat?
The
You say
thrill
it
of
much more
victory,
eloquently
the
than
agony
I
of
do.
defeat. That, yes.
Yes.
Yes, that was the wild world of sports
Yep.
back in the old days. Certainly we'll have an interesting conversation today about that.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, you have a very special guest. We have a very special guest today. Dad, I'm going to let you introduce
Sure.
him because you have that personal relationship with him.
That's right. Well, we have Tim Mack here today. Now, Tim Mack there's a reason why he's wearing a medal around his neck. If those who are curious out there, yes, that's the Olympic gold medal. And in 2004, the Olympics were in Athens, Greece, and the young man next to me won the pole vault in the Olympic in Athens. He has a great story, a wonderful story that really fits what we want to talk about.
Yeah.
As far as the learning experiences that get you to where you are now today.
Yeah.
He is right now the director of track and field out at Spire Institute, just half hour or so east of Cleveland. Also, now he's the head coach of jumps, and it says multis.
Multis, like the decathlon and the
Oh.
decathlon.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So-
Okay, so he's just not pole
So
vaulting.
I coach all the jumps now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna have a fun
Yeah.
day of
Yeah.
just what he went through. Bill Livingston wrote a book. You are a completed one.
Yeah.
Also talking about this
I'm excited.
amazing experience.
Yeah, Tim, I've heard about you for years. I can remember, I don't know, way back in the day. I don't think I was not a track athlete. Despite having the coach in the house, I was not the track athlete. But I remember you, Dad, always saying, do pole vault. Pole vault's where is that? Is that how he got you into pole vault? Like, what was that moment where you,
No, actually, I did because I grew up in Westlake, so in grade school, we were running, so everybody would run long distance, and I didn't like to run at all. So I saw the pole vaulters in the corner of the gym going and playing around on the pole vault mat, and I was like, that looks like fun. They didn't even have to run. So I was like, hey, coach, can I do that? And,
Yeah.
and she was like, sure. And then so I did it a little bit, and I was somewhat successful. I mean, 8 feet or something like that. Scored some points for the team, and then went to Ignatius, and I kind of pursued it there. And luckily, Coach Kyle supported the team, and we had some seniors that were jumping very well. So
That's
Yeah.
right.
I just kind of kept it going from there.
I never pole vaulted in my life.
yeah.
Let's make sure we understand that. Nor do I ever want to pole vault in my
it looks
life.
like a lot of fun.
Oh, it was.
I have to admit, it
You know,
always
when you
looks like
become
guys are
the
having
track
fun.
coach, you
So-
study events, and okay, so yeah, I think all I could say is hopefully, at least your coach at Malone complimented me one time,
Yeah,
going,
right.
"Coach, you didn't screw him up."
Yeah, right.
Thank you, Coach. That
Well,
was
yeah,
really
the
nice.
good thing was we had a nice runway to run on. We
That's
had nice
right.
pole vault
Just-
pits. We had what we needed.
Yeah.
And he made sure we didn't get hurt.
Right, and
So,
get the plant, and then I don't know, try to figure out getting over
Yeah,
the pole.
get
But
your
I'm going to
feet
make
over
sure
it.
you have a good plant, and that's
Yeah,
about
right.
all I could do.
So it was grade school. You kind
Yeah,
of fell in love
started.
with pole vaulting, and it just kind of
Yeah.
went from there.
Yeah, just kind of went from there. I went to Ignatius and, of course, did it my freshman year. But I always really wanted to play. I wanted to play either football or baseball.
Mhm.
And so I played baseball my sophomore year,
Yes,
and I didn't do track
Ah,
and field.
that
So
Oh wow.
I know.
I didn't
He took a
notice.
year off.
Yeah.
I remember seeing him pull out in the van going to a JV baseball game, and I'm walking out to the track, and I'm going, "Oh, there goes our pole vaulter." Oh,
yeah,
well.
because they were on the same season, so you can't
Yeah.
do
Yeah,
baseball and
right,
track at the same
right.
time.
Yeah. So then, what brought you back to? What,
Well,
He couldn't hit a curveball.
no,
Ah,
I
come
couldn't-
on.
I couldn't hit.
You
I
couldn't hit the
I-
curveball.
I could field. I could field really good, but
Yeah.
it was like it was a tough day. One time there was a competition way out on the east side, and I, from Westlake, I would have to take the RTA home, and I was like, oh man, I'm not gonna go till like 9. So I was like, I'm gonna have to skip, and I never, I'm not really, I don't skip things. And
Yeah.
So I skipped that game, and for some reason the starter was out, and they were calling my name, and I wasn't there. The third stringer
Oh my
played
gosh.
in my place, and he
Oh.
did very well, and then I never got to play
Oh.
again.
But
So then I
how-
went back
wait,
to the
Hey,
So
came
how
back to pole
different-
vault. There
I
you
mean,
go.
how different would your life be if you
Yes.
didn't skip that
If
game?
I
you
didn't
didn't
skip
skip.
It
You
would
wouldn't
be-
have this hardware
I
around
I
your
know.
neck. That
You never
was
know.
the-
There's a lot of weird things that happen, and I think throughout our conversation, you guys you'll even figure out even more
Right.
weird things,
Oh, yeah.
strange things that happen, and a lot of steps that have to happen the right way in order for something.
Wait,
great to
but
happen.
okay, so that day you skip the game, you find out, third string kid comes
Well,
in.
then I
plays-
rode the bench the rest of the season.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but were you devastated at the time?
No, I wasn't. I
No?
mean, I don't guess I didn't love baseball that much, but
There you go.
I was just like, well, this isn't going to work, and I rode the bench too much, so I'm like, I might as well pole vault now because I get my name in the paper
That's
every once
right.
in a while, so
Yeah,
I must be kind of good at it.
That's
So-
right. Yes, he was.
So went
very
back
good.
to it.
yeah.
I would have loved to have that sophomore year back.
I know.
Because training,
Could have been.
he'll tell. I mean, he trains guys. I
Yeah.
mean, you don't go from 10 feet to 18 feet in 1 year. It's
right. The process.
you move up a
Yeah.
foot or two maybe each year, and so it's a process. But
We just had an Olympics over the summer. I'm sure a lot of you out there were thinking, what does it take to really train and get to the Olympic level? So when we come back, we'll be talking with Tim Mack about what that training is like. How do you get from 10 feet to 18 feet and those life lessons that he was talking about along the way. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You are watching The Object of the Game, and we are talking with Tim Mack, a gold medal Olympian in pole vault. And if you were watching us before the break, we were talking about training and just how much training and effort goes into making it to that level. I'm sure you've thought about it. You've probably had questions about it as you've watched Olympic athletes on the big stage. So Tim's going to take us through that rise to professional status. But we left off kind of like the high school years is where we
Yeah.
were.
Mhm.
you're right. Well, what you're going to hear about in the next few minutes is certainly about commitment.
Yeah.
That if you're going to do it, do it
Gotta
right.
it. Yeah.
And that's what you're going to hear
Yeah.
quite a bit about.
Yeah,
And just perseverance to keep going.
yeah, and a lot of it is, and I was telling you a little bit beforehand, is like a lot of it is just following my gut.
Mhm.
Like I didn't know I was going to be an Olympic gold medalist, but it was something I enjoyed. And my parents were never really like, "Hey, why are you doing that?" or anything. They just let me go because I enjoyed it. They didn't know the first thing about pole vaulting, but
Yeah.
they allowed me to follow that path. So
Yeah. So high school, again, the regional meet, I could spend a half hour. Talk about the regional meet.
Wait, you got to talk about this regional
Oh,
meet because before
I'm
we
not going to
started
say
recording,
where it was because I don't
Yeah,
want to
right,
get
we
in
don't
trouble with those people.
Yeah, right. We don't need.
But here you have a
he's still
excellent.
mad about it.
Here's the excellent pole vault. It's the regional meet. In this facility, you had to pole vault into the wind. Most places have a dual runway.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You put the pad in the middle, so if the wind's, and you come to the meet and you decide, what you're going to.
Yeah.
Nope, this was only you had to go right into the wind,
Do
and
you-
it was a
do you
strong wind
remember
that
this
day.
Now that he's
I
talking about
remember
it,
the competition. I don't remember every little detail.
I
but,
do.
But running,
Oh.
you can imagine if anybody is a jogger out there and they run into the wind,
Yeah.
it's not very easy. But if you're sprinting full blast with a pole that's about,
Yeah.
at that point, 15 feet long,
Yeah.
it's like a sail. So it's just like, it's very hard to keep your posture
Yeah.
and to keep it.
Right.
So it's like one of the hardest things.
So
to do.
all these pole vaulters, they're battling and they're missing, and you're getting blown around.
Mhm.
And top 4 make it. He finished 5th because of misses. That's the one track thing in the back of my mind that I'm
Yeah.
gonna
so
live
wait,
with.
what year was this? Was this your senior
Oh,
year?
that was
This was
Junior year.
90.
yeah, your
90.
senior year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Your
so we're
senior year.
He's still
Oh,
mad about it.
I'm still mad. I
in
can't believe.
I put it back.
2024.
Yeah,
put
I
it behind
remind-
me. Now he's still mad.
Now,
Yeah.
he even said earlier today, now I'm gonna have to think about that all the way
Yeah,
home.
I know. I'm gonna
I'm
think about
sorry to
that
bring
today
that
and be
back
like,
up.
"Oh,
But
yeah."
then did you
So-
miss going to states?
Right,
Yes,
so, yeah.
and he should.
Wow.
And that
He
was
was-
one part too. Is like a lot of people think like, oh, gold medalist, you must have just been like a phenom in high school and went to the state competition and like won states. And I was like, actually, I wasn't really even recruited, and I didn't go to the state meet. So
Wow.
Mhm. Right.
So then what made you think, like, I want to keep going with this in
Right.
college?
So I felt like I was pretty decent. I got my name in the paper, like I said before. I got my name in the paper a few times, so I was like, well, I must be somewhat good at it. And in the paper, not online. Like
Yeah.
it is these days.
This is back when there were
This is back in
papers.
the
If you need
Cleveland
to know
Plain
what that
Dealer
is,
days.
just email
Yeah.
us,
Yeah.
snail mail us. We'll explain it to you.
Google it.
Google it.
So I enjoyed it, and it was like anything. I didn't know how much I wanted to, how long or how far I was going to take it, but I liked to do it, and I enjoyed it. And so I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to do it in college. And so I was going to go to the University of Toledo. I was there. The coach was going to allow me to walk on, which means you're allowed like a trial period to make the team, because I wasn't really good enough to make the team yet. But they were going to let me walk on. And I was there. I had my schedule. I had my ID. I went to orientation. I was there. And then I went to a summer competition and met a coach from Malone College. And it's a smaller school, but it's in Canton, Ohio. And he saw something in me at one of these summer competitions, like in July and school's going to start in about a month.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like September. And he saw him. He's like, hey, why don't you come to Malone? And I was like, what's Malone? You know? And so I talked to him, and there was another guy who was going to Malone, and he was jumping 17 feet at the time, and I was only jumping 13.6. And so I was like, wow, they must be doing something right. But he saw something in me, and he asked me to come take a visit, and I was like, well, what have I got to lose?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Toledo was going to let me walk on, which is fine, but this guy sort of kind of wants me for some reason. I don't know why, but
Yeah.
so I went there, took a visit, and made it happen.
Yeah.
You know, they came up and talked to my parents. My parents, of course, they didn't question it. They weren't like, no, what are you doing? You're in Toledo. They just, they let me go with it. So if it wasn't for them, of course, you know, there's a lot of support on that part. So, and then ended up going to Malone.
So then the training schedule,
right?
Like, so then, yeah.
It ended up a good move too, because his pole vault coach and Malone, you know, I mean, you're going, well, you know, you think great pole vault coaches, you have to be at, you know, USC or Oregon or something.
Right.
This guy did a tremendous job. I can't take any real credit.
Oh, well.
He did a really wonderful job with you.
He was there, and he was there. He was retired, but he loved the pole vault. He loved everything about it. He loved coaching it. He was there for our running workouts. He was there for everything. So it was like a no-brainer. Where I was going to go to Toledo, and it would have been like, you might make the team or you might not. So I was lucky to go there, learn a lot. He loved pole vault. He brought a lot of Russian techniques and a lot of the Russian training techniques, you know, to us. And so we were basically sort of like his guinea pigs of, you know, we would be out there in the snow running, and I was just like, whatever, just tell me what to do and I'll do it, you know? And I continued to get better.
So was that, I mean, you said in the snow. I mean, was there a training year round when you get to the college level?
Well, college level, we did train year round. And at Malone, normally a place will have, like, a lot of times now that people have indoor tracks, but Malone did not. And so we would train outside in the snow. We would vault sometimes in the snow. Like, we would, like, in the snow and ice. And so, and in the gymnasium. And after 3 years, so I was at Malone for 3 years, and you know, we were in the gym, and I was wearing some spikes, like high jump spikes, which aren't good for pole vaulters. But anyways, and I was almost hitting the air conditioners because I was starting to get better and better. You know what I mean? So I went from 13.6 after 3 years, jumped 17.5, and actually broke the record of Brian, who was the guy who I thought like he was like the guy that got me to Malone, you know. And then after 3 years, Coach Ralph, I don't know if he saw something in me. He knew I needed to blossom somewhere else, and he was like, you know what? I think you need to go somewhere else. And I was like, talking about, like, I would have stayed there. I was already there 3 years. I was going to graduate the next year. He's like, you need to go somewhere else, and you need to go maybe down south and jump where the weather's nice and with some better competition, so you can really see what you're capable of. And I was like, okay, I'll trust you, you know. So sent letters out, of course. That's dating the time here, though. So
and then where did you end up?
Sent letters to everywhere, and I ended up at University of Tennessee.
Oh, wow.
And they had people, like, it was like full circle. So when I went to Malone, I was jumping 13.6, and I went there because the guy was jumping 17.5. And so Tennessee, I was jumping 17.5, but there were 3 guys jumping 18 feet and 1 guy jumping 19 feet. And so I was like, well, I probably want to go here because they're going to push me and I'm going to push them. And you know what I mean? I didn't care about, like, getting beats or anything. It was just about the event at that point. So I ended up going there. They wanted me, and I was jumping high enough to where now I could get some sort of a little bit of scholarship. So I went there.
Yeah. Well, he did go there. and he ended up being Southeast Conference champion in the pole vault. So he did okay.
Yeah.
He responded pretty quickly to the change.
Yeah, so it was like, and it was a good thing because it's like a lot of the things that I learned was like, yeah, for one thing, I was following my gut, but when I do talk to a lot of younger kids, it's like, I don't know if it was I was just lucky or I was looking for that, or I just knew deep down inside that I just needed to keep good people around me. Like it was for one, Coach Kyle for taking care of making sure we had everything and staying there and going back to track and field. But then it was at Malone and staying by Coach Ralph and trusting Coach Ralph. And then, then it was at Tennessee and trusting my coach there. And so it's like I always had like good people around me kind of looking out for me.
That's great advice too, because I think everybody always thinks, am I making the right move? Am I, I don't want to make the wrong move, and then I end up hurting my career, or I end up hurting my, chances at getting to the next level. Let's talk about the training for the Olympics and that journey coming up after the break. You're going to want to hear this. Welcome back to Object of the Game. We are talking with Tim Mack, an Olympic champion, Olympic gold medalist in pole vaulting. And we're talking about what it takes to get to the top. I'm sure a lot of you watch, you think, wow, of course you see the success, but do you know about the hard work that it took to get there? So I don't know the story as well as Coach Kyle knows it and Tim knows it, but we're going to talk now about just what it took to get to that level. And it wasn't an easy road.
Right. Well, he, as we mentioned in the previous segment, he was at Malone and made the move to Tennessee, Southeast Conference champion in the pole vault. I mean, that's a great track league. Mm-hmm. Here we are. Right. You are now on the stage. But, there's things that happen. And so there you are. You win now it's the next stat. You've got to think about the Olympics today. You got to think about it now. Right?
Yeah. And it's almost like the whole time, you start thinking about Olympics, but even from high school, it was like I was never like that phenom. So it was always like I was always sort of forced to focus on the process or forced to focus on my craft. And so over time, it just continued to be something like that, where everybody wants the outcome and they want to see the outcome. And it was like, maybe I had good people around me. Maybe, it was luck on my part. I don't know. But it was just something with a factor. I was like, well, no, I'm just going to focus on what I'm doing and everything. And that's what it was. And even after I was done with Tennessee, it was like, well, I'm not really Olympic material yet, but I'm going to give it a shot. You know what I mean? And so I continued to train at Tennessee. I had having good people around me. I had my advisor, Buck Jones, who was like, "What are you going to do now that you're graduated?" And he's like, "Are you going to still pole vault?" And I'm like, "Well, normally when people are really good out of college in track and field, you might get a shoe deal, and then everything's already done for you. But most of the time, that doesn't happen. You have to just scratch and scrape and claw your way to the top." And so I was like, "I think I want to keep going. Yeah, I think I'm good enough." And so he's like, "Come back in a couple weeks." And so came back in a couple weeks. He's like, "Tim," he's like, "Tell you what, I got an assistantship for you. You're going to get your graduate degree in sport management. So you're going to stay here. It's going to pay for your room and board.
Wow.
And you can stay here with your coach, B. Miller, and you can use the facilities, which is a big deal too."
Yeah.
And he's like, so you can continue vaulting for 2 years." And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, you got to take it.
So it was almost like I had these people kind of like guiding me, and I was like, I don't know if it's lucky or what, but maybe people saw some more in me than I saw in myself. But so I stayed there, went to the 96 trials right there, and quite honestly, I was out of college, I was young, I was pretty much in over my head. I was on the runway in Olympic trials, like talking to myself, going like, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss, don't. And of course, what do? You miss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I didn't have a great showing at the Olympic trials, but had the assistantship and continued to keep training for the next 2 years under my assistantship and stayed there at Tennessee.
Yeah. So that was the 96 trials.
That was 96 trials.
So then you try again.
So then, so my assistantship lasted until 98, and then I had 2 years where I had to like get a job.
Yeah.
I had to get a real job.
And I do have to.
Not even a real
Isn't
job.
this about the time that the D&M track club kicked into gear? The
club.
D and track club. Because you needed to have a track
Mom and
club.
Dad, mom first.
Mom first.
Yeah.
M&D.
M&D. Sorry. The years have messed me up there.
Yeah, when you're in track and field, of course, like I still wasn't good enough yet to have like a shoe sponsorship, which is like they'll take care of you. They'll give you a stipend. They'll give you shoes and everything else. And I wasn't good enough yet to do that. And I mean, I was like 26 at the time, so time was starting to like, run short. It's kind of, luckily my parents didn't give me grief, but they would send me some money every now and then. And of course, my parents I would have to like compete under their mom and dad track club name.
Yeah.
Right. That's
They
how
were
you
the
get
ones
into the
funding me.
meet.
Yeah.
Here's
So,
my
but-
track club.
But
Yeah.
for the next few years, I was kind of competing under the mom and dad track club, and I was also working as like a fitness trainer
Uh-huh.
because I had to work full time. And so after I was done working, after that, I would like run to I would get to Tennessee. I was like a Superman where he runs into the phone booth and
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah.
Yes,
I would
yes.
run into the bathroom and change and I couldn't wait to get out there to train because I was like, gosh, thank goodness I'm out here now training.
Mhm.
So then I would train after work from like 2 or 3 o'clock until about 6 o'clock. And so I kept doing that, kept going. And then, I kept getting better every year. A couple inches is a big deal in pole vaulting. So, after Tennessee, I would jump to 18 feet 4 inches. So by year 2000 was the next trials. And I was going to be, I was like 27, just turned 28 years old. I was in my prime. And I was ready to go. And so like, here I go again.
Yeah.
You know?
And
So-
what happened?
So I was ready to go. I was jumping 19 feet at the time.
Wow.
So
Wow.
after Tennessee, I was jumping 18.4. Now I'm jumping 19, and I was probably top 5 in the country. I still didn't have a shoe deal yet because there were a lot of people that jump high. So I was still supporting myself. And mom and dad track club, of course, was helping me out. And so I went to the trials. I was ready to go, But in track and field, it's not like any other sport where, like, let's say football or baseball or basketball, where you go professional.
Yeah.
And everything is taken care of, and there's a coach there, and they do all your workouts for you, and they're waiting on you for practice. It's like track and field is like, I pretty much made my own sprint workouts. I made my own weight training workouts, my own plyometric workouts, my own recovery workouts, and everything else, abdominal workouts, every routine that you can think of, I had to do. And every routine, if I was sprinting, I had to show up there by myself, and there would be like nobody at the track. So I was doing everything, and I wanted to make that team so bad that I ended up training too hard. I wanted to make it so bad that I
Overtrained.
ran even harder
Mhm.
and I weight trained even harder. But what I was doing, not knowing what I was doing, is I was breaking myself down. So by the time I got to the trials, I was like, something's not right. It's like I should feel better. And so, I mean, I was top 5 in the country. I was like I was 28 years old. I was
Mhm.
gonna make it. That was my time. And then I ended up like I couldn't believe the situation I was in, and I ended up jumping. I got like 6th or 7th place, and I only jumped. The thing was, is I jumped 19 feet that year, and I only jumped 18 feet 2 at that trials,
Wow.
and it only took 18 feet 5 to make that Olympic team.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So inches.
So I'm like, if I would have just not even jumped my best, I could
Yeah.
have made it.
Yeah.
But it's like that's what track and field is, and it's like it comes down to so many little variables that you just can't believe it. So that was probably the lowest of lows, right there. That was the lowest point.
How many athletes would hit that?
Mhm.
And come on, be so discouraged,
Mhm.
right? That they'd have to to walk
I'm done.
away.
Yeah.
Right.
So many athletes would, and you couldn't blame them. To be honest, you can't. I mean, I've got to get on all that life.
Yeah, right.
But-
right. And
But there's a determined young man
Yeah,
that
that's
we're
right.
talking to today. Okay.
yeah, right.
So so what's that thought process? So it's
So after
2000,
that-
you didn't make
So
the
2000,
team,
I didn't make the
and
team.
you're like,
And I get back to my, I was in Tennessee still at the time, and I was like, okay, well, you got 2 choices. Like, if I didn't, I'm like, you could just hang it up. You're 28, you gave it a couple good tries. Like nobody could fault you for that. You know what I mean? Or you can do things even better, because I was still just super determined. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, there's no way that should have happened, And and it's sort of like, you for some reason you fall in love with that craft, and you're like, I can do more. There's something more to this than just. I mean, it became more about just the pole vault. It started to become more about just making Olympics. It started to become more about that, and I was like, I am going to do everything I possibly can under the rules of the Olympic Games, of course,
mhm.
to make this next Olympic
Yeah.
team, no matter what.
So you went with your gut again,
So I went with my gut again.
saying
yes.
this is it. We're
Yep,
going
I
to
was like, this
train.
is what we're doing.
Yeah. All right. We want to hear about that Olympic moment too, and right before, during, right after. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to hear more from Tim Mack when we return. Welcome back to Object of the Game. And this is kind of a story of if at first you don't succeed, try again. And we've been talking with Tim Mack, who won the Olympic gold medal in 2004 for pole vaulting. And we've gotten to that moment where now you're training for that 2004 Olympics. And it was a long road to get there.
The trial. I mean, just making the Olympics is really, but
it's the
in talking to other Olympians, they'll tell you that the Olympic trials was more nerve-wracking because you finish fourth and bye.
Yeah, right.
And you know you're good. You already experienced that 4 years earlier.
Yeah, and I learned a lot of these things kind of like trial and error. Like I knew I couldn't be on the runway telling myself, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss. I was like, obviously that doesn't work. Overtraining, trying too hard, wanting it too bad just to make an Olympic team, that doesn't help. So I would have to find other ways and other avenues and other ways to go about my business and making this next team. And so I was determined, of course, and I put together a sort of a support staff. A lot of the people around Tennessee didn't know they were part of my support staff, but they were. One person in general was Joe Whitney, who was a sports psychologist. I started seeing him. And I started seeing some sports psychologists before that just to kind of like make sure I was doing things right and getting through injuries and stuff. But I mean, we started getting very serious about it, and it wasn't, and he was the one that got me onto. He's like, okay, so now you want to make this Olympic team. He's like, but we need one goal. We need one thing for you to focus on to get you through these next 4 years. And he's like, I'm going to leave that up to you. So the next time we meet, I want you to tell me what that is. And so I got back to my apartment, and I was like, what's the biggest thing? And I just thought like Olympic gold medal, and I was like, oh, no way, that's like I'm like, no way, that's like I can't do that. I was like, of course. I mean, I was like, I just want to make an Olympic team, but I was like, no, Olympic gold medal, I mean, that's like about the biggest thing you can ever think of. I was like, if he wants a big goal, I mean, I'm gonna come out with it. And I tried to talk myself out of it. Trust me, because I was like, this is too much. I was like, no way I'm not capable of doing that. You know what I mean? But I was like, nope, that's gonna be it. It's gonna be a gold medal. And so I went back, and he's like, okay, good. He's like, if this is gonna be your goal, you need a way to think about it every day. You know what I mean? Or have it focused every day. And so again, going back to my apartment, I have all these tasks to do before the real task is confirmed. And so I was like, okay, well, if it's gold in Athens, it's like I can connect it to my email somehow, And so I got all these letters or I got all these phrases like gold medal in Athens, and I was like, no, that's too. I don't want people to know that much, you know what I mean? Or it's like gold in 2004 at AOL.com, and so I was going to attach it to my email address, And so I was like, that's the only way, because back then you had to type your email every day. It's not just automatic log. Or maybe it was, and I didn't know how to do it.
No, I think we all typed it in.
So you had to type it in. So I was like, if I type this every single day, it's got to come true. You know what I mean? So I eventually found it, and I was like, there it is. And it was gold, the letter N, and then Athens at AOL.com. And I was like, that's it. I was like, gold in Athens. And you know what I mean? I was like, that's going to be the email for the next 4 years. And then I was like, oh man, what if somebody asked me what my email is? Because I didn't want to tell anybody, because I was like, I barely believe it. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay. So I was like, I'm just going to tell them it's Gold Nathan's. And then I'm just going to get out of there.
Oh, nice.
So I was like, okay, if anybody asks me, I'm going to be like, it's Gold Nathan's. And they're like, what's Gold Nathan's? I was like, I'll see you later. Get out of there. So I had the email Golden Athens for the next 4 years, and my sports psychologist Joe knew it, and my coach Jim B. Miller, Coach B, is what I call him. He knew my goal. I knew my goal. Those two knew it, and nobody else really knew it.
So was it a mind frame?
It was
like a mindset.
It was a mindset. It was like,
that's what made the difference.
So every decision I made at that point was going to be geared. Is like, and that's one thing. If I had a hard decision to make, it was like, is this going to get me closer to gold in Athens or further? And if it was going to get me closer, then I was like, then I will make that decision. Because at that point it was like everything was getting more and more. I mean, this is like, I was going to be 31 years old, going to be 32. Right. It was going to be my last shot. It was like, and pole vaulting is no joke. And what you mentioned about the Olympic trials, you have to make it out of the Olympic trials. Right. So you have the Olympic trials, which is you have to make it there first, and then you have to make it out of the Olympic trials. So the top 25, 30 guys in the country show up, and you have to be in the top 3. Right. I mean, you can't mess up. Not even if I was Olympic even if I was like the world record holder,
Right.
I show up and I don't make it.
Trials.
You don't make it.
Yeah, I can remember, everybody's, hey, Tim, this is the pole vault day. Tim's got to, go.
Yeah, right.
And everybody's saying, oh, yeah. And I hear he won the trials. And I'm like, oh my, oh, wow.
Yeah.
He won the trials. I wasn't, he may have been thinking gold. I was just going, he's going to the Olympics, and that school was talking about it and everything.
Right.
But that was, in our mind, that was like, how wonderful.
Yeah.
We would be greedy if we thought, oh, he's going to win the gold,
And then it was at that point where, you make the Olympic trials and you got to understand, and I think some people that are listening have to understand too, like over that 4-year period, I was trying to create any kind of realness to it as I could. I mean, I was looking at myself in the mirror, telling myself like, you're the greatest pole vaulter to ever live. And I couldn't even look at myself sometimes because I was like, that's ridiculous, because I saw it in a movie one time, you know what I mean? And then, so there was other times where I invented certain things. Like I invented a running sled because the sled I was using was not helping me to get better. So I was like, I drew out a sled and I took it to a welder and they made a sled. And then my shoes, my spikes that I ran on, they were like long jump spikes. But anyway, I don't want to get too into it, but they don't have a heel on them. And I was like, well, I need to be taller because I'm trying to defeat gravity.
Right.
So I took them to a shoe person and I was like, can you just cut this and put some foam in the middle and make me taller? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was coming up with all these things. So it just became more about, it wasn't even about the gold. It was like, I'm going to see how far I can take this.
Yeah.
So when I got to the trials, which was like a nail biter in itself, it was just, luckily I was working with my sports psychologist and it was like, we're focusing on the process. And I knew from the other experiences, like these other things don't work.
Yeah.
I have to trust this. This has to work. I have to just focus on a couple of different things and that's it.
Yeah. That leads me, I'm sorry, if you want to.
I was just going to say, like daily affirmations with Stuart Smalley while we're all dating ourselves, the looking in the mirror and saying, I'm going to look, that made a difference.
Yeah.
It is,
being comfortable with it.
And I didn't know really at the time, and nowadays a lot of people do, and you hear a lot of great athletes and say that you can manifest things and like believe what you want. But I was doing that without me knowing it. I was saying Golden Athens, and I was listening to I was walking out into the Olympic Stadium 4 years before I even made the Olympic team. Like my sports psychologist was like, no, you have to walk out there, and I was imagining myself walking into the Olympic Stadium. The Olympic Stadium wasn't even built yet,
Right.
so I was already way ahead. So when I got to the Olympics after the trials, it was like I'd been there thousands of times already.
Yeah.
That's
what were you going to bring up?
Yeah, that leads right into what I was. All right, so here you are, and you've already prepared your mind. It would be so easy to go, pressures to win the gold medal.
Yeah, right.
I'm feeling pressure, and you've seen Olympic athletes fold. I'm just lose it with that. I mean, they could do that routine, and I mean, we see, they could do that, but at that moment, the pressure to win, and here you are on the runway. All right, now at that point, did you concentrate on hey, I want to make the best turn I've ever, or some technique part? Because I think at that point, the nerves would get you if you just, oh, this is it. If I don't, I got to get the technique.
We're going to hear about that exact
to
moment.
me, that's fascinating.
We got to take a quick break, but I think everybody wants to hear what is that moment like. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to Object of the Game. We have made it to the moment we have all been waiting for. What is it like to be on that big stage and have that moment of, this is it, you're in the Olympics?
All right, you did the nervous trial, which is for every athlete very difficult. You got to finish in top 3. Here you walk in the stadium, you're on the runway.
Well, and
how do you handle this?
And that's the thing is, it's when people say like the Olympics is a pressure situation, it is like the absolute pressure cooker. And luckily, I had good people around me, and I followed my gut a lot of times. But having good people around me and trusting in Joe, knowing that like if you execute certain tasks, you will have an opportunity. You know what I mean? to jump as high as you can. So the gold medal, it's like, even though that was gold in Athens for 4 years, it started to become sort of like a little mirage. It started to just sort of like disappear a little bit into more like, how can I get the most out of myself today? And so a lot of that was, is like, what I remember, like when I was telling you in 96, when I was on the runway, I was thinking like, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss. Well, this time around, 8 years later, I had, with the help of my sports psychologist, I was on the runway going, keep your posture and hit your arms. And those were like two cues, two things that I needed to do in order to complete a task. And I had to trust it because I knew by process of elimination, whatever I did before didn't work. And I was like, this is going to work. It has to. But it's not different than execute in any other sport. It's like you have to do it. And I just sort of had to do it because I was forced to. So I was on the runway, and there's like, I mean, I could go through the whole competition, but I was I was at the winning height. It was the third attempt. It was an Olympic record. I've never jumped it before. And I was in silver medal position. If I missed, I got silver. If I won, or if I made it, I would get gold. And so it's like, silver's not bad. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But
this looks
but
much
there was
better
no
on you right there.
there was no email silver in Athens.
But well, that's funny you say that, because actually after my second miss, I had 3 misses. So in every height you get 3 attempts. So after my second miss, I just remember going like, oh my gosh, you might get silver, you might get silver, you might get silver. I was like, I can't believe what's going on. I can't believe what's going on. And then I was like, and pardon, I was like, you idiot. I was like, your email was gold in Athens, not silver in Athens. And that was the one thing, like you would think like gold in Athens was, it kept me going every single day that 4 years, but no, that's the thing that flipped the switch when I needed it the most.
Wow.
So then it got me right back on. I was like, you're going to keep your posture, you're going to hit your arms, and those are pole vault terms, so we're not going to get into that technical jargon, but
it's a very technical event, needless to say.
So, but
even
I
watching
knew
it,
it's like that's what I needed to do, and so I knew the other American was favored actually, so I needed to really stay focused on what I was doing, and so he jumped and he missed his second, so now we were both down to 1 attempt each. I mean, 1 attempt, like this whole 4 years, actually 8 years, and it's coming down to 1 attempt of a bar that I have never cleared, and it's Olympic record, and it's my 3rd attempt. 70,000 people are clapping. The 60-second time clock's going down. What are you going to do? You know what I mean? So I'm thinking like, keep your posture and hit your arms. And if people look it up on YouTube, they'll see me mumbling.
Wow.
And to myself, they're like, what are you talking? What are you saying to yourself? And I'm just like, keep your posture and hit your arms. Keep your posture and hit your arms. And I had to do that till the very last second. I mean, when I was running, I was thinking about keeping my posture and hit my arms. Then all of a sudden, it just became automatic. And I was on the runway, and it was almost like slow motion. Like I could almost like move my pinky if I wanted to move my pinky. It was going that slow. And so I was going down there. I remember keeping my posture. Then I went to go hit my arms, which was like, again, pole vault lingo. But I did that, and there was like something strange kind of happened. But then my body immediately corrected and fixed the problem, like at will. And so the next thing I remember is I was on top of the bar, and I barely brushed it with my shirt. And I know, I mean, we're talking 8 years, and I brushed it with my shirt. If I hit it a little harder, it's gonna just roll off. But I knew I didn't hit it hard enough because I've been jumping for so many years. I knew I just jostled it barely, and it was just kind of moving a little bit. And I knew on my way down, I was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a picture.
I made it.
There's a picture.
And there's a
at
picture
school of you like that.
But of course, in an old Tim Mack fashion, I landed, and I was just like, yeah, like I gave out a blood curdling roar, and I was just like, and it wasn't really because I thought I won gold at the moment, but it was more like I conquered this task, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
But then, of course, I thought like Toby's got one more. If he makes it, then we're back to the same old thing.
Right.
So I couldn't really enjoy it for too long. So I had to be like,
okay,
idiot.
Yeah.
Keep your posture and hit your arm. Don't celebrate again. I can't believe you did that.
Yeah.
So,
and then what happened to him?
But then I knew he was going, and I was preparing myself for him to go. I was like, Toby's going to make it. He's going to clear the bar. The crowd's going to go crazy, and I'm going to jump the next bar. You're going to keep your posture. And I was like sipping Gatorade, and I was just talking to myself, self-talk. People always tell you it's good, and it's just like a tug of war. Like the whole 4 hours, it was like one of the longest competitions. But I remember him going, and I'm like, okay, the crowd's going to go nuts. And so I started preparing myself to jump again. And then I just remember hearing like, okay, he's in the air right now, and he's going to be coming down. And I was like, wait a minute, something didn't sound right. Because normally if somebody makes a bar,
crazy.
they go crazy. But this one was like, oh, good try. And I was like, wait a minute. And I never looked at anybody because I didn't want to like watch anybody vault.
Yeah.
Only because I didn't want that in my head. But then I looked over, and I just see him like with the bar. I don't know. I see him like he wore a helmet at the time, so he like threw his helmet on the ground, and he was waving to the crowd, and I looked on the pad, and the crossbar was on the pad, and I was like,
Someone won a gold medal.
what happened? I mean, is this
Yeah.
it?
So did you question it? You had that moment of like, did
Yeah, I
that
was like,
really
wait a
happen?
minute. Why is everybody? I was like, come on, guys, let's keep jumping. We're still trying to jump here. And then
Yeah.
it's like, I was like, oh my gosh. But it's almost like I kept jumping, of course. But it almost was like, it was past the moment of like, usually people stopped and enjoy that they won the gold medal. But
Yeah.
at that point, I was past that point.
Yeah.
I was past the point of that. And I was like, how much more can I get out of my craft?
Wow.
So I kept jumping and try to jump higher.
Yeah.
And then I ended up on three misses, of course.
Yeah.
But
I couldn't even go out with a make. I had to go 3 more.
Well,
and miss.
yeah, but you had a goal. That was
Yeah.
the
Well,
Olympic
I'm not
record.
gonna
You had
get
an
greedy.
Olympic record.
I'm not going to get greedy. But no, that was
So what was the height? What was the
it
Olympic?
was 19.6 1/2. So every Olympics they go to break a record. So they can always before you go, they always have the increments predetermined.
I got to ask about the mom and dad track club here. So
Oh,
I mean,
right.
what was it like for them? I mean, did you
Oh,
call
yeah.
them
They
right
were
away? or
there.
did-
They were
No,
there.
They were
whole
there?
family was there, and that's the thing. Like, my whole family was there, and they wanted. Of course, it was like, we're over there in Athens, Greece, and so they want to go. They want to get together, and they want to have fun and party and stuff. And they're like, "Come on, we gotta meet." And I was like, "You guys, I love you, but we'll have fun after." You know what I mean? Because I was still on my.
Yeah.
There's a lot of distractions, and I just learned over time I was more of an introvert type person, so I was like, I can't. That's just going to drain me if I go out. And I thought they were going to care, but they didn't really care. They had plenty of fun. I saw the pictures after. They're like, they're going on cruises, and they're like, having their wine over there, and it was like, they didn't care, and we had a lot of fun after, though.
Well, right.
Did he give you the vocabulary words, Tim?
I did.
You got the
I
vocabulary
did.
words?
Right.
Why don't
I
we
sent
take a
him
break?
list.
We're going to take a break now because then we're going to go through the vocabulary list and
You
talk
pick
about.
out
Okay.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, whatever you want to do.
Yep. All right. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Object of the Game. It is vocabulary time. This is where we take a
That's
word,
Right.
an actionable word, and how it taught Tim and all of our guests the thing that they needed to learn. Now, you came up with this vocabulary list.
All right. Just again, this is just a list of typical English teacher themes.
Mhm.
But when you talk about learning, and that's what we're talking about. So I send him the list. I do not know what he's going to, which words 1, 2, 3 he picks out.
Yeah.
Tim, go right ahead.
Well, I think one that jumps off the page is obviously perseverance. I mean, that's probably the one thing that carried me throughout that whole time period. Whether it was if I was in high school, wondering what I was going to do, or getting through the state meet, or not making the state meet, persevering through the failures that are associated with trying to chase after something that is that's bigger than you think, and the perseverance that carried me through Malone College, and maybe not doing as well as I wanted to do there through some of the injuries, persevering through some of the injuries that I had at Malone College, and then again through Tennessee, had more injuries through there. There's a lot of times where you have to come back from injury, and then of course, I mean, through both of those trials, and we didn't get to is I failed one more time in the
I was
2008.
End on the high note.
I know, but I mean, I tried to make the Olympic team again in 2008, and I failed again there.
Yeah.
So I think is like I think the biggest thing is perseverance, but persevering and learning how to deal with failure. And a lot of times, I over time I developed a way of like, if I had goals and I failed at my goals, it wouldn't be that like, oh man, it wasn't a down thing. And this is what I learned over time. It wasn't something where I was like, get myself down because I didn't make the goal. It was like, okay, I didn't make the goal. I'm not going to lower it. But what else do I have to do in order to get that goal? You know what I mean? And so I would try to find different ways different things in my life in order to accomplish that task. And
Yeah,
so I think persevering through the failures, I think would be another addition to that, is just like learning how to deal with the failure and taking it as a positive and learning from it rather than it tearing you down.
And that's what young people have to understand.
Yeah.
There's going to be those disappointments. There will be. That's just human being, and it's just how do you handle that?
Yeah.
He's the perfect example of how you handle it.
And there's another thing is like I was on Instagram actually the other day, and it was something from an athlete that I coached, And he just happened to put it on there, and it was like, this is something that Coach Mack used to tell me, and I think it would be very helpful to everybody. And it was like, you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. You know what I mean? And you have to work through the awkwardness of change. You know what I mean? And so whenever it's like something might not feel right, you might not feel good with it, but if you persevere through that and you work through that awkward moment,
adaptability.
There you go. Adaptability.
Adaptability.
Yeah.
This list is like perfect, but it's you got to be sort of like comfortable with that, because that's the only way you can grow and get better, is if you learn to deal with that change.
Yeah. So many kids need to learn. I mean, so many adults need to realize that
human
that's
nature.
part of life. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. Okay, Tim, something else we do on this show, because the English teacher over here always had the quote. I don't know if you did.
No, I didn't have it. I didn't have you in class.
You didn't have him for English?
I don't know.
I don't think you did.
Well,
no,
I didn't.
Did you
never
hear
did.
about the
I did
quote?
not
Like,
have that. No, I
if
didn't
you
have
got in
a quote.
trouble,
No,
if
I
you got in
didn't.
trouble, you'd have to write the quote.
I'd have him
No, I
write a
didn't.
Shakespeare quote.
Okay.
So
That's
we wrap the show with a quote that is picked out specifically for our guest.
I hope I can do that every time there's a guest. Yeah, I can do this. But what if I have somebody go, I don't know.
No, give them a general.
All right. Now this will work. This is from the play Twelfth Night. It is a comedy. Okay, it is actually coming to the Cleveland area. Okay, the people could see it, but anyway, and it's actually stated by the villain. I don't know. He's not really a villain, and he says this: some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. And if you take a look at that, you know, the idea of born great, some people are born prince of whatever country. I mean, they didn't have any decision on that. They were born into it. Some achieve greatness, and it takes, as you heard all day today, how it takes work. And there are some that greatness is thrust upon them. They're at the right moment, at the right time. If something happens, and they had, 2 minutes before it happened, they had no idea what was going on, and something happens. And then their name's in the paper, and it's like, how did this happen? I just got up this morning to go to work.
Yeah.
And then so it was an interesting quote, because it captures what can happen when you say greatness. There's a lot of different views of that.
Yeah.
But some achieve greatness. That's what we have there.
Yes. And Tim, you're helping people achieve greatness out at Spire Institute now as a coach.
Right.
How many kids are you coaching?
Well, right now there's at Spire Academy.
Academy.
It has changed over time.
Changed. Sorry, I'm used to the old name.
But now, like the last 4 years, it's been Spire Academy, and it's out in Geneva, Ohio. And we have a lot of different sports. We've got, of course, track and field. We have swimming. We have lacrosse and soccer and basketball. And so kids can go there. They can either live there and go to school there and train there, because we have our own academy and our own residences, or they can also commute there. So luckily, like, Northeast Ohio, if you're looking for like an academy to go to, of course, Spire is a destination for anybody looking to go to high school at an academy and train at a little bit higher level than they would normally. So I've been out there for 4 years. I love it. I mean, it's got the greatest facilities. We have a lot of the great people that are in place, and we're just continuing to get bigger and grow.
Yeah.
That dual runway that we were talking about?
We got many.
You got runways all over the place.
The one that just goes.
They
into
have
the wind?
runways all over the place. Heaven's sakes.
And we have a humongous 300-meter indoor track, so we don't really we don't vault out in the cold weather anymore.
Right. Yeah. It made a man out of you.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And that's the thing, is whenever I'm coaching, I'll be like, wow, back in the day.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
Now I'm that old guy.
The paper, and we pulled
I was
it
like,
in
I
the
used
snow.
to chip ice out of that box, and they're just like,
My gosh.
Well, it doesn't shock you that here's an Olympic guy, and he's still giving back to the sport and giving back to things. That's
I know. Those kids are lucky.
They're lucky,
Yeah,
and
those kids
it's
are
just
lucky to have you.
a wonderful compliment to you that you're giving back. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Tim, thank you so much. I love
Great
hearing
story.
your
Great story.
This was great.
So much.
It's so much
Great
fun.
story.
Yeah,
And of
thanks.
course, you can follow all of the show on the Big Play Sports Networks. We are on Twitter, X, YouTube, and we'll post it to all the social channels. Thanks so much for joining us on Object of the Game.